I should probably go back at some point and re-edit some of the titles on these videos because they're not the best titles. But I suppose they'll do for what we got. How hot is it outside right now? Because it is not great in here. That's not bad. I think it's about the same inside as it is outside. That's not super useful. Oh man, I'm wiped out. A little bit exhausted the last couple days. I think I actually slept through a night. I'm not sure what day I'm on. We are. Is it Wednesday? Are we sure that's what day it is? Yes, it's Wednesday. Okay, so did I miss a day? So we had Sunday. I don't know what day I'm on. I really don't know where I am in the week. Alright, so dice game design. I mean, I came up with a basic set of rules that I was going to work with the last time I was on here. And for the most part, I think I'm sticking with those. So what we're looking at is, I got such a headache going on right now. So I do like sort of the idea of going further with, having the capability eventually to do a level up, being adding more dice, but I think that's leaving too many opportunities and options available for future games at the cost of the original game. It's sort of like somebody when I was younger told me the whole thing about like Swiss Army knives is like, you have a Swiss Army knife and you think like, wow, it's got all of these capabilities, a tool that you can use for all these features. But the trick is, none of those things are the best version of those items. The knife sucks. The scissors are terrible. The can opener isn't the best. The bottle opener is nigh on useless if you don't get it right. The corkscrew on a Swiss Army knife is probably the best of the features on a Swiss Army knife. Once you make something that does 12 different things, it does none of them well, but it does more things than anything else. So instead of making a dice game that's intended to be a Swiss Army knife dice game that you can use in 100 different ways, I'm going to favor going with a simple playable version and make it good for what it is, and I can always do a version 2.0 later. But so what that means in this particular case is I'm not going to waste the time and energy making a game that has the ability to expand and grow in different levels. So like leveling up would be a neat feature. Is it a thing I'm going to make in this game? No. But I will keep it in mind for future games. So what that really leaves us with at this point is a game where you're going to be at the same level all the time, which sort of, I think, kind of works for what I want to do with it. Like if you're always at the same level, I think the replayability of the game that I'm building, like the modular system, the mission cards, the character cards, and the cooperative versus oppositional gameplay styles, and expansion packs of characters and expansion packs of missions, I think that does enough of being able to do sort of like, so many superheroes have been around for 50 or 60 years, and it's sort of like you get repeats of certain storylines, clone sagas, and the death of somebody important in the family storylines. And so I do feel like it suits the style and design to have a character who's always a level 5 Spider-Man for like 30 some odd years. They don't get a massive character upgrade. They're always the same character. So I like the idea of having the ability to play a character for 30 years if you want to, and have them play multiple scenarios over and over and get a different gameplay each time through. And so, like, the non-evolving character, for the most part, I think works well. And since it's a dice game and not a role-playing game, it also works all right, because a role-playing game is something where the character's abilities and experience points grow, and you have the ability to add levels, add experience, add story to the character. But in this case, I mean, the story is the events you interact with. So I think that works best for what I'm trying to do. So in that case, you're always going to have the same number of defense die and attack die from the pools to choose from. Now, I'm feeling like for a base set of 6 of each, being sort of where I start from, that it can probably carry you through 3 rounds, especially if any dice you don't use go over to the next round. So you choose whether you're going to be a defense heavy round or an attack heavy round, and you use your dice as appropriate. Any gadgets or any regens that are rolled by you and claimed by your opponent are lost to you. If they're rolled by you and claimed by you because your opponent didn't take them, then they're lost to you for future rounds. But if you don't claim them and your opponent doesn't claim them, then you get to re-roll them. And I think that makes for an interesting strategy element where roller versus opponent, you roll, say, a gadget and a bunch of other attacks or whatever. Your opponent has the option of taking that gadget, but it'll cost them to get it. So it'll cost them a yoink. I still don't know what else to call that. A swipe, a steal, or pick up, or grab the gadget card die. It'll cost them a die to do that, but they may get a gadget or an item that's useful to them. And if they take it, it deprives you of being able to take it. And if you don't take it yourself, again, I think you're going to have to expend a grab a gadget card to get it. But if you don't, I have to think about that part of it. If you are the one who rolled the gadget die or the regen die, and your opponent doesn't take them, you should have the option of taking them for yourself. I feel like you should have the option. Maybe not. Because it does add a little layer of complication. It's your own die, but to be able to claim it, to claim a gadget or to claim a regeneration, you have to use one of your other dies to claim it. And if you do that, you're sort of losing 2 dice. But if you don't claim it, you don't get a gadget or a regen, but you can re-roll the die the next round. I feel like it might actually streamline it and make it better if you roll a gadget or a regen, you don't get the chance to claim it. But if you roll them and your opponent doesn't take them, you get to re-roll them. Just default. But I do feel like there's a possible benefit. I guess it's really going to come down to the first round of play test and find out whether or not it makes sense for what I think is in-game play. Does it make more sense for if you roll a gadget or a regen and your opponent doesn't take them, you can choose to take it yourself without having to spend anything to take it, or you can re-roll it. If you take it, the die go into the used up pile. So at that point, it almost becomes a re-roll. You get the option of a re-roll of that. Or turn it into something you can use and use it up. I think that makes more sense for what I'm trying to do. I think that's what I'm going to use as my test default. All right, so that sort of is the main mechanic of the game. It's just defense versus attack, use up dice, and multiple rounds, you have the same base set. So if you use up all of your defense on round 1, you've only got attack from then on. So I do think that adds a little bit of strategy and planning and tactics against opponents. And then the other part is finding the right numerical balance for your opponents. If you are working together, a cooperative play, finding the right numerical balance for the game to oppose you. So henchmen and henchmasters. What's the point value you're aiming for so that as you play, you have a chance, but it's not too easy? Finding that right balance is the trick on that, I think. But other than that, that's pretty much all of the mechanics that really need to be taken care of. So, I mean, in this case, dice games are fairly simplistic. I mean, I'm maybe overstating that there, but I mean, I still have to work out the numerical value for what each mission card should have in a cooperative game. Because oppositionally, like if 2 players have the same foundations they start from, then it's always going to work out in some way or another. Now, that's before I've really sat down and fully calculated out what the special power for each player is supposed to be, for each character. I'm going to have to see if any of those drastically unbalance the gamer character play. I think for most part, those powers for the heroes cards are going to be something more along the lines of pull a extra die for a type of power, or use the player card as an extra die on either hand-to-hand, ranged, or power attack, or swiping like a thief. And then I do have another wild card. We could do another wild card option. So fight, hand-to-hand, range, power, yoink, wild card. I feel like having a character have a sort of a regen or a gadget creation ability is a possibility. And so that's like 6 powers that I can use. 6. My numbers are a little off. So that's 6. And for each character, I'm going to have 8 characters to start with. So what else do I have I can use for that? There is always the possibility at a certain point in the game to do a, I think I mentioned one of the games I looked at as a resource for referencing on this. There was the possibility of like a hero character with the ability that allows them to use a power attack like a ranged attack, or vice versa. So use any power die as a ranged die, or another character might be any ranged die as a power die. And you could also do use any power die as a I want to say grapple. Why do I keep messing that one up? Fisticuffs or whatever. And I keep forgetting what I'm calling it. And you know, fisticuffs could be either a, you know, just it expands those capabilities where you look at, you know, you can use any die as it's usually rolled, or you can use it as any of the other die. You suddenly have a whole slew of possible applications for the hero's ability. And do I do one ability for heroes, or 2, or what? I gotta figure that one out. So like some of them might be like this character has the ability to has a extra ranged attack. Their special power is to use an extra ranged attack. Or you could do something like you have the ability to use any ranged attack like a power die. Yeah, so I'm going to have to see how many power options that for me, but I think that seems to be a fairly balanced way to do it. I wonder if at some point I have to be very, very careful, because like the possibility of saying character has the ability to at any time use their special ability to bring out one of their dead dice of type A. That could quickly become unbalanced if there's not a limiter or a cap that you put on that. So once per combat minimum, I would say, or maximum, you have the ability to apply your power like that. Or depending on... No, I think really just once. I was going to say, it might be possible to say, once per round rather than once per mission. And I was thinking that might be plausible if I'm setting it up so that you burn through your dice fast on missions. But I don't want to build missions where you burn through dice fast. I want to get a right balance to start with. And I don't want to upset that balance by giving somebody the ability to just keep drawing from their dead dice pool again. Although I could do for certain characters who have like a more defensive power theme that they can use their ability to exchange any unrolled attack die for a rolled defense die. So that's plausible. That's not a bad way to go, actually. All right, so those are some fun and interesting ways to potentially play with power base for character designs. Now, I did sort of start brainstorming out some characters. I roughed them. What was that? I roughed out some of these choices as I didn't even name them yet. I have 5 of the original 8 that I want to do. And I found myself quickly, I'm looking at them, I'm going like, okay, I like this idea, I like this design. I'm like, I have 1 villain type character theme and 4 heroes out of my 5. And I'm like, that feels kind of unbalanced. And I kind of want to have, the option of like 4 players playing, and 2 of them choose to be bad guys and 2 of them choose to be heroes, and they're in conflict, but they're also in teamwork. So like I want to have that be an option, team versus team play. And I mean, you could do hero against hero. I mean, that can happen, or villain against villain, and nobody has to abide by the alliance themes of the characters. But I do feel like there is a distinctly heroic feel to some characters and a distinctly villainous feel to other characters, and I want to have a nice balance of both of those. I mean, I want it also to be possible that you could take the villainous character and have them be a hero character, but sort of like a dark, broody, rough hero. Not quite an anti-hero, but maybe an anti-hero too. But so what I had for sort of hero themes was a character who has the ability to sort of astral project themselves out of their body into like a ghost form, a ghost that can manipulate their environment, and so picking up chains and doing stuff like that. But at the same time, their body, without a spirit in it, becomes sort of like a zombie body. And so in a way, it's sort of like those characters who could split themselves into more than one. But at the same time, this split has a sort of a ghost and zombie theme. And so as part of that, you kind of want the zombie body to have sort of a regeneration ability, a healing power, so that you can treat them like a zombie. Like they can be stabbed or shot and they'll just get back up. So that's sort of one of the character themes I have. And believe it or not, that is a heroic character. As much as it sounds like a dark and gritty hero, I think it can be played a little bit differently. I think all of them are going to be very dark, heroic universe kind of feel. It's not going to be like three-tone, pajama wearing, uh, truth, justice, and the American way. Must oppose the mustache twirling evil guy tying people to train tracks. And it's not going to be that. I do think my setting is going to be a little more dark and gritty than that. I had a character who was sort of like a military police force response team to superhero attacks, whose power was unknown. They didn't know they were a potential superhero. But they always had a knack for understanding the bizarre science gadgets that shouldn't work but do work. So they always understood how all those things work. And then one day they got into a situation where in the elite troop unit's response to a situation, something got out of hand and potentially ended that character's life. But they managed to use their latent and hidden ability to understand that bizarre tech to sort of save themselves by cyborging themselves with things that shouldn't work but do. And so that's another heroic character. And then I have sort of the rough idea of a character whose theme is dinosaurs in some way. Maybe able to become. No, I don't know. I don't know that I want to do like they can become any dinosaur. But maybe. Because like I can see them turning into an Ankylosaurus, which is a highly armored dinosaur, and having their power reflected in that sense as the ability to turn any attack die into a defense die. Or they could turn themselves into a Tyrannosaurus Rex, in which case their defense die can be turned into an attack die. But I mean, that's story element trying to interfere with gameplay mechanics, because you can't have an indiscriminate ability to do either direction on that one, I don't think. I think that's too powerful an ability. It's an unbalanced ability. So I have to figure that one out a little bit better. I just like the idea of somebody able to be dinosaurs. I almost want to make it so that they don't have the option to be anything other than a dinosaur. So they mutated into some form of dinosaur. And do they get stuck as one type of dinosaur? Or do they get the chance to turn into a dinosaur on a regular basis? I don't know. I'll have to figure that one out. I just like the idea of a dinosaur-themed character. And then I have this idea of a character who at some point I like the idea of a character who has the ability to seem, or maybe not even the ability, but the curse of appearing to be a floating Cthulhu-like monster in the air, but as a heroic character. And I haven't decided whether or not they have the ability to almost make like shadow puppets to represent themselves on the ground and hide themselves in the air so that they can pretend to be like a mysterious superhero person on the ground, but when truly confronted, they reveal themselves to be a giant floating squid monster in the air. I just like the idea of like somebody so drastically deformed or seemingly so deformed. I got to figure that one out a little bit more too. And then my villain character, as dark as all of those sound like they could be villains, my villain character is a little more lighthearted. Somebody whose life was hard and uh, they were forced into a position of being a thief to support themselves, but they hide the struggle of their life behind humor and pranks. So I sort of feel like those are like 5 characters that I already like as like themed characters. I have to figure out how they're going to work with the power mechanic that I'm going to be using in the game. I would imagine the villain character, their power is more likely to be something that they can use as an extra swiping or yoink die. The zombie ghost character, I feel like a regen on that one makes the most sense. The cyborg character, I feel like a gadget effect on that part makes the most sense. The Cthulhu creature, I don't know, and I don't know about the dinosaur guy. And I have 3 more to come up with. So I may base those off of the power when I chart out the different powers that I can bestow on a given character. I imagine they're going to be something like 20 to 24 power options, and I'll only have 8 heroes, so I'll choose ones that make the most sense for the first set, and maybe start planning in an expansion set, and then sort of base my next set of heroes off of that. And then I gotta really work on figuring out what I'm going to do for the world building. Like, what's the setting? What's the story? What are superheroes? Where do they come from? How long have they been around? Do regular people know about them, or do they occur in secret in the background? Are they the Ninja Turtles, or are they Superman? Like, does everybody know about them, or are they an underground thing? I don't know, and I think that comes down to how the overall game will feel. Because there is a certain feel to like a DC style character where they're colorful costumes and they're all sort of demigods and they're sort of celebrities in their world, versus a Marvel comics where you have more of a, these are people with a secret in their daily lives, but the public knows they exist, And I do kind of want to feel like I feel like it's more fun to have origin stories for characters, so that it's not just like, oh yeah, well, it's this super secret serum that was started to be used in World War II that makes everybody a superhero. I feel like that's a cop out, um, and I think it sort of ruins some world building for me. Like it ruins character building. It ruins the fun of a character origin story, and I think it's too formulaic, and uh, I think it has the potential to just injure the setting a little. But a little too open ended can feel kind of like fluffy and fake. Like, how did the world get to be the way it is in the setting? And have we always had heroes? Like, are the legends of Hercules and Gilgamesh, are these actual superheroes from the distant past? And perhaps we just went through a period of time where uh, heroes were thought to be witches and possessed and burned at the stake, and so we didn't see a lot of them for a long while. They went into hiding, and we just assumed they weren't a real thing. And then people started to emerge a little bit here and there after the Age of Reason started to set in a little bit. I don't know. Like, I have to figure out what's the right feel for the setting is, because if you do a like a very dark, like, we've always had heroes among us, and we all have the ability to become a hero, but everybody has a trigger event, and some people's events are just harder to have encountered, and so some people never get the chance to become the heroes that they could. Um, but we've always had them. Sometimes we've treated them like freaks and monsters, and that's why we've always assumed they're gone, because we hunted and ruined them. Like, is that the way I want to go? Because that gives you a little bit of the like outcast. um it's sort of like dangerous to admit to being heroic, and so it happens in the shadows. Nobody knows it most of the time, and there are only rumors and urban legends of people wandering around with special abilities helping the world. That's one way to do it, but it makes a darker, more brooding type of game. Whereas I think the possibility of a setting that's a little bit more like, there have always been people with special abilities, but for some reason, we're reaching a time in human history where the scope of those abilities are expanding again. The age of myth and legends existed, and it was in a time sort of like, uh, the sun goes through periods where sunspots are common, and then sunspots are more rare. So solar storms go through period cycles of like 10 to 13 years where they're common, and then less common, and then common, and so on and so forth. Just sort of like geographic history, where you have very volcanically active periods of time and very volcanically quiet periods of time, or um, ice ages come and go. And so you have those aspects of cycles, and potentially the age of myths and legends was a period of high superhero activity, and then it waned for a long time. Not that it went entirely away. And so, like, folk legends and folk heroes of certain types can sort of count, but we're hitting a point where we're getting a high period of um, activity again, and uh, its implications for the way that the Earth is going and humanity is going. Is this, the next step in evolution? Do we, from that point on, all move in a direction where we get to realize our powers, and then we become the gods and demigods of the next cycle's human beings, whatever they may be? That one's a little more mythic, and it's not as dark and brooding. And I think the way I build the story setting really sets up the best, like, the feel for the gameplay. I don't, I think I don't want this to be a dark and gritty edgelord kind of uh, superhero setting, but I don't want it to be lighthearted and comic booky, goofy. I kind of I like the Marvel Cinematic Universe not being a series of 3-color villain of the week, absurd, formulaic adventures. I don't want to have that feeling, but I don't want it to be gritty and dark either, necessarily. I want actually, as I'm thinking about it here, what I really want it to potentially be is sort of midline between the two of them, with the ability of certain characters and groups get together to play a game where they can take the character and play up the gritty parts of that character, or play up the goofy, lighthearted adventure parts of that character, and make their adventures either light and fun or gritty and challenging. Like, again, I'm running the risk, if I don't handle it right, I run the risk of making it something like the Swiss Army knife I was talking about earlier, where, like, a Swiss Army knife can do 12 things, but it does none of them well. I don't want to make a game that can be, 5 different types of superhero story, but it doesn't do any one of them well enough to be an enjoyable game. I don't want to do that. But I kind of like the idea of, like, if I want to play a game where I play the zombie ghost girl and you play the trickster thief character, if we're sitting and playing against each other, and say they're both heroes or both villains, it doesn't matter. If we want to play an encounter where, like in the comic books, sometimes a hero runs into another hero and they get to a point where, like, we must fight each other for whatever stupid reason in that particular issue is. It's just a excuse for a rumble between two characters. To be able to just play a couple rounds like that and run at it like that without this dark, broody narrative behind it. Like, I think that would be fun. But at the same time, I think it's also possible to, have a group of 4 people get together and have 2 people play villain characters and 2 people play hero characters and run a string of missions against each other, because, the villains are attempting to try to get control of some mass conspiracy that'll enable them to change the world in a way that we would see as negative, but they see as maybe they're trying to eliminate a certain group of the population, because they see them as inferior and a danger to the human's future, and we have to oppose that. like eugenics and conflict of interest, and characters in teams fighting against each other for the fate of the course of human progress. Like, that's serious. It's philosophical. It's got some grit to it. And I think it would be fun to be able to sit down and have that kind of game between 4 people too. But the base game itself should be able to play somewhere in the middle of that. And you don't have to pick a lighthearted, rompy, hero versus hero battle in the streets of New York City. And you don't have to do the fate of human civilization hangs on the balance of which side gets to decide that fate. The side that feels like we have to eliminate all the weak and infirmed because it compromises our ability to build a better race of human beings, versus the group that feels like everybody should have a chance to be valued and part of humanity. Like, you don't have to be that heavy about it, but you can be if you want to be. And so I feel like I need to tune it in to somewhere in the middle with some hanging threads that let you make it fun and light, or dark and gritty if you want to. That's going to be a fine balance of world building too. That turns out to be the theme of this game, I think. Balance. You got to find the right balance. Alrighty, so I think that's where I'm at tonight. We're coming up on 50 minutes. I'm still a little uncertain whether or not I was here last night. I'm pretty sure I wasn't. I think I probably fell asleep early and slept through last night. I was surprised. I thought it was Thursday. And I'm not sure if that means I missed a day or didn't. It's Wednesday, right? Yeah, okay. I have no idea where I am in events right now, other than highly stressed by all the other things going on right now. All right, so here's hoping. Over the next day or so, I'll do a little more work on this. I'm trying not to let myself get distracted by a few other projects that my brain goes, ooh, shiny, and just runs off on. But I'll try to focus a little more on this game and see if I can get a little out on how I want to finish up the mechanics and the world building and the character sets. But once I have that all worked out, I think I think last night, I'm trying to remember, I've had a few nights over the last week where I stayed up all night long working on things and then did another night of video. And so I'm a little unsure what day I'm on half the time. So I've had a few 2-day long days. So I'm a little vague. I think what probably happened was I was up extra long. I think it was probably 10 a.m. to noon before I went to sleep. And then I slept long and I woke up early. So I'm not sure what day I'm in half the time. So I think I slept through last night. But it's going to happen sometimes when I do this to myself. I really have no idea how I'm going to handle the 4 days when I head out to California. It's going to be tricky. I'm still, part of my stress right now is I booked the flight. I'm not super excited about it because it's still a crap ton of money. And it's in a time period right now in my year where money is super tight. And so I booked the flight full well knowing that my arrangements for where I'm going to stay while I'm there have not been resolved. I'd been waiting to book the flight until I heard back from people about what nights I could stay with them. But, I contacted several people. Half of them aren't available to do this. I haven't heard back from the other half of them, and I don't know what days work for them. But here's the thing. When I book a flight, I usually use a service that lets me have the flight price. I can find the right price, like the time and day where the price for those flights are the cheapest. And the problem with that is if you don't buy it at a certain time, that lowest price disappears and it starts to go up by increments of $50 to $80. And so, like, I'm in that window now where it's only going to go up, and I needed to book that flight. So I booked a flight for the 10th. I should get there on the late evening on the 10th. I can probably hang around in the airport all night if I have to. Get up, catch a bus over to the convention early in the morning. Go to the convention, and then convention events sort of end at 5 to 6 p.m. And I can then head over to any place that I'm staying at for Thursday night and Friday night. And I had kind of been waiting to find out because, like, the convention, like, the real days of the convention are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then you're done at 7 to 8 p.m. on Saturday. And I was kind of feeling like there are two ways I can do this. I can go back to a place that I'm staying a Saturday night and leave on Sunday afternoon, evening, or I can go see if I can find a flight out late Saturday night, like 11:30 Saturday night. But I haven't heard back from where I'm staying yet, so, and I'm not even sure I've got anywhere to stay. But as it stands, like, I had to book the flight, so I booked the cheapest one I could manage to arrange, and that means I'm going to get there at 9 p.m. on Wednesday night, the July 10th, and I'm going to leave on late night Sunday and arrive back in Boston on early Monday morning. And that's really hard because what that means is I really, at this point, I could figure something out for Wednesday night at the airport. That's not a huge deal. But Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, I need 3 nights of a place to stay. I can't get out Saturday night. I'm stuck waiting till Sunday night to leave. So that means I need to find a place to stay for Saturday night. And ideally, it would be a late arrival on Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. So it would be a 4-night stay in LA area. But I don't know how much of that's plausible. But at this point, how many days we got left? We've got 10 days in this month and 10 days in the next month, I think, right? Yeah, roughly. So I got about 20 days to get it figured out. If I really, 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 really have to, I might be able to see if I can find an Airbnb. I'm not super excited about it because it's all around the Disney resort area, and everybody knows for an Airbnb in that area, they can charge a premium price. So, yeah, I don't want to spend about $130 more on places to stay. But we will see what I have to do. Alrighty, so that's sort of the plan for right now. Tinker around with the game world and character designs a little bit more, and then sort of give a dry run of both the player versus player feature and the player cooperative against the mission. And potentially, like, I may have to do a dry run of all the types of gameplay. So it may be single player against the mission, team against the mission, team against team, player against player, and I may have to. I'm thinking I'll probably set up a player max of 4, because I feel like if you have a point where you have 4 players cooperatively playing against a mission, like, it becomes hugely unbalanced. But there may be a possibility of doing something where I do a feature in the rules where if you're doing a cooperative play against a opponent, like a mission opponent, it could be something along the lines of, if you have 2 players, this is how many minions, and this is how many dice for the minion master. If you have 4 players, 3 players, 5 players, 7 players, you know, it's like you add a die for every player or something like that. So I might end up being able to do something like that. We'll see. That comes really down to the game mechanics as I play test them. See what makes the most sense. But anyway, we're almost at an hour. I'm calling it. I will try not to fall asleep tomorrow night. I should be good. I don't know why that happened last night, but I'll be back on tomorrow with some more updates. All right. Thanks for joining me. Take care of yourself and have a good night. Whew.